font of our text, we're going to look at styling it in other ways. So this is making text bold, underlining it, making it italic, and a lot more. We did of course see how to do that in the HTML section, but I hope that you're reasonably convinced that it's best generally to keep styles separate from content. So rather than using strong, for example, to have some bold text, we're better off putting that information in our style sheet so that we can apply it to multiple styles and update it and manage our website much more easily. So let's start off indeed with some bold, and I'm going to get rid of this Google Fonts just to avoid any confusion. And so let's see how we make our text bold. It's pretty easy. We use font weight. Now we can be really precise with our font weight and use a particular number, or we can use one of the standard options, and I would normally for bold go for bold. So that will set our text to be bold. So what about italic text? Well, first off, let's just switch this to a class so that we can have a nice reference for you with lots of different types of text formatting. So we'll have italic there. So this is going to be some italic text. And then dot italic to select that class. And for italic, we use font style. And we've got normal there, which is the standard oblique, and we're going to be doing italic. There you go. So bold and italic. Now I'm going to set you a quick challenge. I'm going to put an extra bit of text here saying this and this is bold and italic. And I'd like you to somehow, any way you like, make that sentence both bold and italic. Go for it. I hope you managed it. I hope you used some sort of a span around that sentence. And then I think the easiest way to do it is just to apply the bold class to that span. And then the span will be both bold and italic because it's part of the paragraph. Let's have a look. There we go. But if you had a separate class for that one, which was bold and italic, that's fine, but you've kind of made it italic twice because it was already italic from the paragraph tag. All right, the third new type I'm going to show you is underlining. So let's just copy that and we'll have a class of underline. And we'll have this text is underlined. And it's pretty easy to do once again. So underlined to select that, and then text decoration and underline. Let's have a look. There you go. So those are the three major types of text styling that you're likely to use. As it happens, I probably use text decoration none more often than I use underline, because quite often I want my links not to be underlined. And let's just have a quick look. We'll have an empty link there. This is a link. So by default, of course, links are underlined. If, as is the style in many websites these days, you don't want your links to be underlined, then you would just set an instruction in your CSS for all links, that is A, and set the text decoration to none. That's a really handy thing to do to stop your links being underlined. But just to confuse things, or to avoid confusion, we'll set that back to underlined. So this is a non-underlined link. There we go. One cheeky trick I'm going to show you is allowing a link to be underlined when the mouse hovers over it, which is quite a nice way of just confirming to the user that this is indeed a link. And you can do that using what's known as a pseudo selector, which is styling a link in a certain condition. So this will style the link when it's in its hover state, i.e. the user is hovering the mouse over it. So we can then bring in text decoration underline for that. And let's have a look. Now, when we bring the mouse over, it's underlined. And we could even change the color. If we wanted to, for some reason, we could make it underlined and green when the user hovers over it. Okay, the one last one I'm going to show you is one that we've definitely seen before, which is making text big. And we do that with the font size property. And we can make that whatever we like. Normally I'd go for something like 200% to make it twice as big as normal. There we go. So nice big text. And of course we've seen coloring as well. So those are the basics. Those are definitely the ones I would use on a day-to-day basis. But there are a lot more. To show you a few of them, I'd Google something like CSS styling text. And then again, W3 Schools comes up at the top. And they've got a few ones that we're used to. So text color, we know all about that. Text alignment, we're actually looking at in the next video. And then text decoration. So this is underlining or not underlining. And there's a few other options there as well. Overline with a line at the top and line through. You can transform your text into all uppercase or lowercase if you want to. Indent the first line. You can change the spacing between letters, change the line height, even change the text decoration if you really want to. And word spacing can be changed there as well. So you can really completely customize the way your text looks using some pretty basic CSS. Great. So that's how we customize the style of our text. In the next video, I mentioned we're going to see how we can align our text very easily to have it left aligned, right aligned, centered. Okay, now we know how to style our text. We're going to see how we can align it. So this essentially means having it on the left of the page, the right of the page, in the middle, or justified, so spread out to fill the whole page. So let's take just our first paragraph. And we'll get rid of the bold class because we're not going to be bold anymore. Well, not in terms of CSS anyway. There we go. So if I want this text aligned to the right of the page, then I simply do text align, and then you can see the options there. The one that I want this time, of course, is right. And very simple. That will align it to the right of the page. Or to be more precise, I should say it will align it to the right of the parent element. So this is the element which this is contained in. So the paragraph tag is currently contained within the body tag. So it aligns to the right of the body tag, which is essentially the right of the page. But if I put it inside, say, a div tag, and then I set that div tag to have, say, a width of maybe 300 pixels. And let's do a background color as well, just so we can see it really clearly. Then you can see the text aligns to the right of the div because the paragraph tag is now contained within the div. So this alignment applies to the container element or the parent element. Okay, I'm just going to set a height for this div as well, so it's a little bit bigger, and then we can see what our text is doing. So that's our right aligned text. Left aligned is obviously standard. You can use text align is left if you want to, but it will be left by default anyway. So, quick challenge for you. Can you create another paragraph tag with some centered text in it? Go for it. All right, hope you managed it. Let's have a class of centered, and I am going to spell it ER, otherwise we get very confused because we have to use the correct or American spellings in our code. So let's have centered, and then very simply, as I hope you managed to figure out, text align center. There it is. This text is centered. Let's take a look. There it is. So the right aligned is obviously still right aligned, and that is then centered. Okay, so that's almost all we need to see, but I'd like to show you justified as well. Incidentally, one of my favorite TV programs as well, but not one of my favorite font spacings. I think it often looks pretty odd on websites if you have a really big chunk of text, but that's obviously up to you as the web designer. So to create justified text, we just use, as you might imagine, text align is, and then justify. Now, in order to see the difference here, we're probably going to need several copies of that sentence. And let's make it a little bit taller as well. Let's take a look. There we go. So you can see what's happened there is it stretched the text right to the edge of the page. And it does that by changing the letter and word spacing. So sometimes that might make your text look a little bit strange, especially if you've got some long words. So I'd use justified sparingly, but if you want to use it, that's how you do it. All right, so that's all we're going to see in terms of text alignment. But at this point, there is one more thing I want to show you. When you're creating a website for a client, quite often they won't have given you the copy for the website yet, and you'll need to put some website copy in there. Now, you don't generally want to put this text is justified repeated lots and lots of times because it doesn't look very natural and the client will be a bit confused. So you may have seen something called lorem ipsum. Now, if you really want to know the facts behind lorem ipsum, you can click that first link, but I'm going to jump straight to the generator, which is a really handy page for basically creating Latin text. I have no idea what that means. I don't really care. But what I can do is then just take that text and copy it into my page there. Let's get rid of the height so that it can change the height automatically, and then have a look. And now I've got a much more realistic idea of how that text is going to look, regardless of what text gets put in there eventually. So lorem ipsum has become the internet standard for generic text. If you want to see what your website's going to look like before you have the actual text, this will give you a pretty good idea. All right, so we're nearly there. Just one more video to go. We're going to look at links in a little bit more detail and those pseudo classes that we saw very briefly in the previous video. And then we're going to be on our big CSS challenge, recreating the BBC News website. So we're almost at the point where we can do our big CSS project. But before we do that, I just want to show you a little bit of styling links because they're very important and there's some quite useful things that we can do with them. So first off, if you can remember this from a couple of videos ago, can you create a link to say google.com, which is not underlined, but then underlines when you hover over it with your mouse? Go for it. All right, hope you managed to do that. To create a link, of course, we use an A and then an href to refer to where we want it to go. I wonder if any of you put google.com like that in your link and then clicked and then got an error. Can you think why that would be? It's because you need the HTTP at the top to tell your browser that this is not a relative link. So without that, your browser will actually go to google.com on your website, which in this case, of course, doesn't exist. So you need to put HTTP at the front and then :// and then probably www. is a good idea, even though google.com will work without it. So there's our link. Let's just go back and now make sure that that works. Yep, wonderful. This is of course underlined though, so let's change our styles so that the standard A link is not underlined. And we do that with text decoration none. But then if we want it to be underlined on hover, we use the pseudo class hover and then text decoration underline, as we've seen before. Okay, so it's not underlined there, underlined when you hover over. Fantastic. So a couple of new things I want to show you. The first is that you can get a link to open in a new tab, which is particularly useful if you want to link to something which is off your website, but leave your website open. So let's copy our Google link to see how we do that. All we do is we set the target attribute of the link to blank. And that will then open a new tab. So Google in a new tab, just so we know which one's which, and open the link in it. Let's have a look. There we go. Fantastic. I think I'm just going to put those in paragraph tags so that they look a little bit more separated. There we go. And then I just want to show you a couple more of these pseudo classes. So we can use hover to decide what it looks like when someone hovers over it. So at the moment it's underlined. We can also use visited to change what it looks like when the user has been there. So if I change this link to a website that I've not been to before, pretty sure I haven't been to google.se, for example, then you can see it's blue. So blue is the standard color for links that I haven't been to before, and purple is the color for links that I have been to before. But we can change that, and we can make that whatever we like. So for example, we might want visited links to be not green, but green for some reason. And then you can see that one becomes green. This one is still blue, but if I click on it and then go back, you can see now it's green because my browser knows that I've been there. So there's a couple more pseudo classes that you can use if you like. To find them, you could just search for pseudo classes links, something like that should get you there. There you go. Good old W3 Schools again. Shows you what they are. So these are the examples. We've seen visited and hover. There's also just a normal link. So if we wanted to style a link that hasn't been visited and is not being hovered over, then we can do that. And an active link, i.e. the link of the page that we're on at the moment, then we can use a :active to style that specifically if we'd wanted to do that. There we go. So congratulations, you've made it to the end of the core part of the CSS section of the Complete Web Developer course. It's quite an achievement and you've learned a huge amount. The best way to keep that all in your head though is to practice it. And one of the best ways that I've learned to do this is by attempting to copy existing websites. And that's what we'll be doing in the next few videos.